Billy, we are exactly 40 days away from the Detroit Lions kicking off the season at Arrowhead Stadium. Now, this has easily been the most hyped up offseason in our lifetime, maybe
Absolutely.
in Lions history. So, what I want to do
Yeah.
is break down what we believe to be the five biggest key factors in no particular order that will contribute to the Lions not just having another winning season, but to winning the North and hosting their first ever playoff game at Ford Field. Where do we want to start?
I think we're going to kick it right off with Ben Johnson returning, turning down NFL offers to stay here in Detroit, building that relationship even more with Goff. We already know across the entire NFL how important it is that your offensive coordinator and your quarterback are on the same page. If I've learned anything over the last 2 years, it's that they are. They feel so comfortable with one another. I feel a great level of comfort knowing that he's going to be here again with how well our offense performed last year.
It was pretty clear that he was seen as a hot commodity in the offseason. He was
Yeah.
having a bunch of interviews. I think we were all pretty sure after how not just the later half of the season, but how the whole season went, because the offense was very rarely the problem. Even when they were 1-6, the offense was chugging. So we thought for sure we were going to be losing Ben after 1 year. And it does seem like he has some unfinished business. It seems like he wants to win something here. It's more than just taking the first head coaching job. And that's exciting. Like you said, the relationship with the players, with Brad and Dan, and it's pretty clear based on the picks that have been made, it sounds like he had more influence than maybe some coordinators normally do in the draft process. When you got a player like Jahmyr Gibbs being picked first, that's, I'll put it in Brad and Dan's terms, that's not a running back. That's a weapon.
Yep. So on that, like, we can't necessarily speak that he 100% had influence or anything like that, but I think that you want to keep him happy, right? And when he's watching college players, he knows what he likes. He knows what he wants, and he knows how he can make this offense go to the next level. So if that means bringing in someone like Gibbs, even if you're picking him at number 12, which is way too soon to pick a running back. I don't know if you've listened to Brad, he doesn't care. He doesn't care if you think it was too soon. He thinks that he got a top like 4 player or so out of that draft down at number 12. If you
Doesn't
watch
care
that
about your
inside
mock
of the bench,
drafts.
yep, does not care. We don't care. We told you months ago we don't care about your mock drafts. You know, if Mel Kiper was that great, he'd have a job with a team, and Jerry Jones would be paying him every last little bit of money to tell him number 1 to number, I don't know what, 375 or whatever. But yeah, I love having Ben Johnson back. I think it's going to be so big, and just giving him other tools, even like Montgomery, someone that probably underperformed on a relatively bad team last year that didn't have a
Two
great
running backs
O-line.
that two running backs that clearly complement each other.
Oh,
Someone you can hand the ball to right up the middle that is also shifty, that is tough to tackle. Someone that Aiden Hutchinson said was like a bowling ball and it was tough to wrap up. Like somebody on your own
Listen.
D line who most of us here, I'm sure all of us Lions fan have high respect for Aiden Hutchinson, and we went and got him.
Yep.
And then you've got, Jahmyr Gibbs, who not a running back, a weapon, catching the ball out of the backfield, being able to kick it into that high gear with that speed, turning a 1st and 10, on your own 25-30 into a touchdown. He has that ability.
And then we can talk about Mims. We got him another toy. One of his toys is out for 6 weeks. So give him a new toy. And it was completely risk-free. It's a completely conditional pick. If Mims doesn't make our final roster, we don't lose anything. And if he ends up being a great part to this team, we gave up a 6th, I believe is what it was. I'm completely fine with seeing if Ben likes this player in this system, in this locker room, for like from Dan and Brad, for that price. I think it's an absolute great play to get him something else for those 6 weeks. We are already talking about how weak our wide receivers were. Let's give this guy another chance out of New York.
That brings us into our next factor, which is the O-line, and offensive line that has been well respected around the league and all through media, rated as one of the top O-line going into this next season and last season for that matter.
Yeah, the O-line defines this team. It defines our identity. And like you said, it's well recognized across the entire league. It's often referred to as the second best O-line in the league, and that's just to Phillies. And yeah, if you're in the same conversation as Phillies, I know we might be that slight step down to many people's opinions in it. it. But the fact that you're even up there is wonderful, because that's the key to our entire offense. And it only got better because we got Graham Glasgow, who wanted to return here. Let's remember that. Graham Glasgow wanted to return without a promise of a starting spot on our roster. So injuries are going to happen every year in the NFL. I think everyone kind of prepares themselves. Like, you even see it right now in training camp. Feel really bad for Jalen Ramsey. You even saw Joe Burrow have a scare. We as Lions fans had Gardner Johnson get a scare. Injuries are going to happen. And I feel like every year you really hear it about the O-line. So the fact that we got an NFL starting capable guard on our bench and someone that we can filter in is wonderful. I love that Glasgow wanted to come back. And you could even say that Ragnow and Sewell, with a lot of, media and player recognition across the league, are our top 2 players on our team. So we can't undersell how important this O-line is. It's literally the key to our entire offense. Play actions for Goff, protecting Goff so he can sit in the pocket and he doesn't have to run around, opening up holes for Gibbs and Montgomery now. If we're moving on and upgrading from Williams and Swift to Montgomery and Gibbs, I feel like you just got better versions of each one. So I'm thinking back to Hard Knocks when they were talking to Swift, and that running back coach was even saying like, hey, we're creating holes for you. Run through the holes. Quit bouncing out. Something tells me Montgomery's like, yeah, I want the holes. I'm coming from
hitting
Chicago.
Those holes. He's a bowling ball. He's hitting those holes.
Yep, absolutely. And if you just watch the vision that Gibbs has, yeah, he'll absolutely hit the holes too. And if they aren't there, which they won't always be, but if your O-line is good enough that teams feel like they need to stuff the inside more, man, if you give Gibbs that outside, we've seen him give that whoop a couple times, really burn into the outside. So I think this O-line, we can't underestimate or undersell how important it is to our entire offense. Heck, our O-line even catches passes. Shout out Penei Sewell.
If you're not new to the channel, then you're already very aware that we answer pretty much all of our comments. So if you want to add to the conversation, let us know what you think is going to be a key factor, or maybe tell us which one of these you think is the most important factor. Feel free to drop it in the comment or join the Discord and continue the conversation there. We'd be happy to hear from you. But we'll jump right into the next section, which is the secondary revamp. Now, the defense was a huge issue last year.
Yes.
Most of the year had a few shining spots where you could see some potential, but overall it was bad. You were losing some games where your offense was putting up 35 plus points and you're still losing games. Easily could have been the deciding factor of making the playoffs, maybe not giving up all those points against Seattle of all teams. That could have been the team that you won against to make it into the playoffs. Go all the way back to week 1. You could have beaten the Eagles if you had a fairly competent defense. Going into this year, they addressed what was clearly the biggest issue in a passing league. The secondary has been absolutely changed with signings like Sutton, CJ Gardner-Johnson, bringing in the draft pieces like Branch, who somehow fell to the middle 8 second round, who was,
what a steal.
if you watch the recent Inside the Den, Brad and Dan made it very clear. Branch was one of their first round guys. He was, in their terms, he was in their first round bucket. And when they saw him still sitting there, that's why they moved up and grabbed him. How big is this change to the secondary, and how big of an impact is that going to have on this defense?
I think it's going to be so massive. I'm having flashbacks. I know you mentioned a couple games where the defense let us down in general. I am playing one drive back in my head where Oruwariye was penalty after penalty after penalty against Adam Thielen. I believe they kept putting him on him, and it just kept failing, and I was getting so angry sitting on the couch. That was the angriest I got the entire season. I think this could easily have the most impact. Like, I know we aren't ranking these number 1 through 5 or anything like that, but if you made me pick one out of my heart, it's this. I think in this passing league, I'm tired of being scared of Kirk Cousins torching you. I'm tired of the Vikings and the Packers being able to circle you on your list and say, like, we're going to be able to just throw on them at will. And that's what they've been able to do for years now. And it's not just these acquisitions with what they're going to produce on the field for us this year. I want to specifically look at a possible relationship between Gardner Johnson and Branch. Branch's college profile listed him as one of the very few, very unique players that can play the nickel corner as well as safety. And there are not many players in the league that can do it. And there aren't many that can do it nearly as well as Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Having him in the locker room, and we've already heard out of the training camp how much of a leader he is in that room, something tells me if you're looking to absorb as much as you can from one player who has just performed extremely well young in his career, it's not like Gardner Johnson's old by any means. He's still like about to enter prime. He is really, really good. I absolutely love having him in that locker room for him to be able to learn from.
And then you also got to remember, it's not even just your new additions. You're hoping to see someone like Kirby Joseph
Oh,
hit their
yeah.
stride in a new year. Here, maybe you get Rodrigo takes the next step. Aiden Hutchinson, maybe even Houston. You don't know what kind of second steps these guys could have going into their new year. On top of revamping the defense, it could be a night and day difference with this defense next year.
It would be a crime to not mention having a healthy Tracy Walker. Could be a huge factor for this team as well. It really feels like you could make the argument that you have too many cooks in the kitchen right now, but something tells me that Aaron Glenn's going to get this all pieced together, going to find out our best lineup. And you've even seen it inside the den, but it's something you know about Dan Campbell's team. You're going to compete for the starting spot. So we know that the best players at their spots will be out there starting.
Competition makes everybody better.
Yes.
And speaking of coming out even stronger in your second year, last year we got a version of Goff that none of us expected.
Oh, yeah, we did.
I don't think anyone in the NFL expected a year like this from Jared Goff. He was top 5, top 10 in so many categories, including what did he do his last 9 games without throwing a pick. And it's not like he wasn't making passes. We didn't switch to a run only offense. The guy was consistent and was a huge part of why the team even had the late season run that they did. If Goff has an equal 2 year, it's not even like he has to get better. He could go out there next season and be the same Jared Goff we watched all season last season. And this is a playoff team. This is a winning he's not the problem. He was not the problem at any point in the season. Of course, I'm sure there were plays here and there, but in terms of the reason we lost the game, it was almost impossible to look at Goff and be like, see, this is why we need a quarterback.
Yes. So I could come at you with a whole bunch of stats right now, and I know that we've already done that in the past and a little short, and I'm sure you've seen it everywhere. I know that I've even seen across like TikTok and Facebook, Twitter, everything like that, of like the blind QB test of like they show their stats and which one will you pick, and you're like, oh my gosh, I would pick Jared Goff. So I don't think stats are looking to convince you guys anymore. So I'm going to make the emotional plea here, and I'm going to look back at his days when he was with the Rams. I think that they went into that Super Bowl and they got outplayed by the New England Patriots. I don't know if we look at every other team that the Patriots have ever beaten and just absolutely say like, this team is trash, that quarterback is trash, that coach is trash, everything about them is trash. They lost 3-13. Something tells me it isn't just Goff and it wasn't just McVay. Something just didn't happen there, right? Immediately after, Jared Goff was the scapegoat. And these are humans that we're talking about. That's an entire city. It's a Super Bowl. It's an entire lifetime dream that if you believe that your locker room and your coach, because we heard the rumors, if you believe that your coach believes that you were the reason you lost, regardless of what kind of scheme he could have brought in at the same time, I'm not blaming McVay. I'm not blaming Goff. All I'm saying is that they both had their hands in the pot and why only 3 points went up on the board. But man, that is a weight that I'm not a professional athlete. Not many people in this world are. I'm not sure there are too many people that could carry that weight. So going into that next season, if you have that rough relationship, do you think that you're going to perform at your job as well as you could? Do you think you're going to enjoy your life? Do you think everything is going to go as honky-dory as it did the year before? No. I think objectively, no.
Night and day difference here. You come here, and we were guilty of this, and I'm sure many of you watching were as well. When we saw Goff part of the deal, it was placeholder. It was just, oh, we're just getting, it's just so we have a quarterback in the deal. So, we're going to draft one next year. He's just here just to fulfill the role for now. I don't think any of us thought we'd be talking about Goff the way we are right now, except Brad and Dan. It seems like they completely, from day one, believed in this guy. And when we heard him say that, it was kind of like we didn't really believe him.
Which to say that.
Yeah, you kind of have to. You just acquired him. What else are you going to say? This is your quarterback now. You kind of have to. And at the time, Brad and Dan hadn't exactly won us all over yet. So we weren't like in trust mode. With Goff playing the way that he is, I get apparently Dan and Brad not just knew, but they made sure that Jared knew. That he was their guy. And so like what you said about the way he was treated likely in LA and the way that everything was the spotlight was on him, that it was all his fault. You only put up 3 points in the Super Bowl. It's got to be a completely relieving feeling to go into an environment where the expectations frankly, are much lower.
Yes.
Not even like not even he didn't have to go out there and put on a playoff year, a Super Bowl year. He could just get comfortable and get to know the team and just become himself again. Follow that up with actually being believed in by your coach and your GM. Jump forward to a year where you put out a performance like you just did.
Mhm.
And now you've got an entire fan base backing you.
Yep.
You had actual real football fans that said, "I want Jared Goff. Do not bring Lamar here.
Yep.
I want Jared Goff." That has to be such a confidence booster. That has to feel amazing compared to what you were describing previously in LA.
Yeah. And the moment that really sticks out to me, guys, is when we were I think it was like 0-6-1 when we were going against the Minnesota Vikings a couple of years ago. And when we had that game-winning drive and he threw that ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown, go watch the replay. I know that you should go celebrate with your teammates, all of that, and be so happy. Literally, like two people in a movie. You see Goff turn, look right at Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell look right at Jared Goff, and they just do the slow-mo run, man. Like someone else, I believe, even tries to get in Jared Goff's way to like dap him up, and like Jared Goff is like, "Yeah, that's really cool, but I have something to do. Okay, I have someone to go celebrate with." In that hug, it just gets the Kool-Aid flowing. I don't know how else to say it. Like you can say that like you feel it in your heart, but as Lions saying like it's just like that little valve of Kool-Aid just gets turned on and it's just flowing through your veins. I'm like we're 1-6-1, and you know what? This moment right here is absolutely worth it. I think being in a place where they want you, they love you, and they believe in you, versus rather than scapegoating you, saying you're the reason you lost the Super Bowl and not wanting you anymore. I think that can do wonders for a human. Your environment means a lot to the way you're going to perform. And that is going to be what transitions us into our final point in this entire culture that Brad and Dan are creating. Every single time you see anyone talk, any players talk about this team and what makes it different, when you see any inside the den, when you just see a GM and a coach talk to one another, it's different. It's incredibly different than anything you would expect in the business world. There have been great successes of people who seem to be very unemotional, very hard to the point. They do their job. You come here, do your job, go home. Good job. We're here. We're winning championships. There are other ways to do it. And quite frankly, I'm going to name drop here. We're going to look at Patricia. He came in and said, "I'm going to be Bill Belichick." Bill Belichick did this one way. He was unemotional. He was hard on his players. Him and Kraft had this type of relationship. I'm going to come here and I'm going to do it. You know what? All the props in the world for Brad and Dan coming here and being themselves, and they just seem like they actually love each other. Those two together feel like an absolute actual match in heaven regarding personality and vision of a team, vision of a culture. I don't know how often you ever truly get that.
It feels like a true partnership. It does not feel like one. But when you're watching the draft room, I'm telling you, someone who's not a Lions fan, let's say if you haven't heard of either of these guys, if you watch Inside the Den, if there was nothing on the bottom of the screen telling you who these guys were, you could never tell me which one was the coach and which one was the GM. It's 100%. It is right down the middle, 50-50 of just they're going back and forth during the draft of what they want to prioritize, what they're thinking. Yeah, what do you think? Well, what do you think? It doesn't feel like a GM talking to his coach. It looks like two people that are both running this organization and just have different roles within it.
Yep.
And you can even connect that to the new form of ownership. Well, I know everyone's going to say it's still the Fords. It's still the Fords. It's not still the Fords. It's just not. You can't just say it's still the Fords. The way Sheila engages with these two is nothing compared to what we saw with Martha and the previous coaches and GMs. Not even close. Sheila is at these desks and active with the process. I know Martha was older. I'm not trying to hold it against her. It's not about that. The point is what Sheila is doing. It's not about what wasn't being done. It's that Sheila is a part of it. Is she super like high football IQ? No idea. But all I'm saying is she's taking an interest. During the draft, you can see she's asking real questions, and they're not just shoving her off. They're taking the time. Every time you can look in one of those clips where she's asking, "So what are we thinking with this guy?" They turn and they point and they break it down for her. They use a little bit easier terminology for someone who probably isn't as knowledgeable in football as the GM and the head coach would be,
Yep.
but she is 100% included in the process. And it's so good to see that relationship between the three of them. It really gives you some hope and it gives you some faith that whatever is being built, it's not just for next year.
Yep.
This feels like something that is built to last.
Yeah.
And that's got to be comforting as a Lions fan. It's something you haven't felt before. It's something every previous year that we've had, and it said it's got to be different this year because we signed this guy, or it's got to be different this year because it can't get any worse or whatever. I think we can all agree there's something different about it this year. There's just something different. There's something where it's last year it was just hard. It was the Hard Knocks, right? I think that's what kind of got us like a little bit extra hyped up. I'm going to blame Hard Knocks for getting us to this point before it was necessary and before it was ready. After the second half that we saw last year and the decisions we've seen Brad make and the relationships we've seen form, this feels different. I can't say that it feels like, oh, it means we're going to win a Super Bowl because we don't know. Why? We're Lions fans. We don't know what that feels like. But we can 100% as a community and a fan base say there's something different here. Something's in the water. Something's happening. And I think this is going to be a year we are not going to forget. And this could be the first year that leads us into a trajectory that makes us finally, for once, be able to enter a group on Discord or talking to your long distance friends or someone who moved out and picked a new team and feel proud to be a Lions fan. It's coming. You can just feel it. And if I'm wrong, this is going to look really stupid.
It's going to make great content. In exactly 1 year, I'm sure that this will prove to be very, very valuable. Do not get me wrong. But I think I am absolutely with you 100%. I know that I always try to make jokes. And last year, I think I put out a tweet or something that said, like, I'm not just bathing in it. I'm not just drinking in it. It's in my veins. I don't think that I think to take it to the next level, I have never identified with the Kool-Aid. Okay. So like it could be in my veins. I could drink it. I could bathe in it, whatever. I am now the Kool-Aid. The Kool-Aid is me. I am it. And we are one. We're like, I am Kool-Aid.
Oh yeah. We'll see you in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe.